You had a question.
Well, like when are these closed and open?
Okay, so we have, so we're going to have a carrier, which means we have a carrier, that means it's only opened on one end. So it's going to bind to the receptor, and this is going to have to transform. So this opens up, putting it in here. That's going to close, and then this will then open.
Okay.
So for a carrier, only one end is going to be open at a time. And then for, let's see, AT-powered pumps, ATP, this one is going to have to use energy, and so there's the primary and the secondary. And then I think you had a question of
Secondary.
so does secondary active transport require ATP in a roundabout way, so non-directly?
Okay.
So on a test question, they could say which they could list, AT-powered pumps, secondary or primary, secondary, carriers, and leak channels. They could say which one directly requires ATP. Only your primary one does. Your secondary is going to be a secondary use of ATP.
How does it do that?
So let's go over. He gave an example of the heart, of a cardiac cell. Let's draw that up. Heart. And then we're going to have a lot of sodium out or in the cell.
Out of it.
Mm-hmm. So our Na concentration is pretty big. And then our K concentration, is going to be big in here. Which means that we have little Na, and we have little K. Do you know what K stands for?
Calcium.
Yep. So then we're going to have this pump. And it's going to be, pumps are always going to be going against the concentration gradient. And so is this one going to be bringing more Na in or more Na out?
More Na out.
Mm-hmm. So
3 out.
3 Na out, and how many in?
2.
2 get in.
So that requires ATP?
Right. So this is going to be our ATP powered pump.
Okay. Got it.
It's the primary one. So when this is having, and then we know it's going to need ATP because it's going against the concentration gradient. So in theory, they could give you maybe this, or like another one and put like 10 Na out, 2K in. Would this pump be an ATP pump or a leak channel? And you would say, oh, it's going against the concentration gradient, so of course it's going to need ATP, but it's an ATP pump. Okay, so I have this one, and then he talked about in this situation, let's see, then we have Na coming in and Ca coming out, right? Yeah. So we're going over here. I want to say that's how yeah. Okay. So this guy would be your secondary.
So those together are secondary?
Yes. So this thing. Because it has to be a pump, and what makes a pump is one thing's coming in, one thing's coming out. And so you would say, his example was with the plant digitoxin, or foxglove is also what it's called, or there's 3 names, or I don't think I ever done the other one. That one most often used, digitalis is the other one. So he said, okay, if you have digitalis, what it's going to do is it's going to, do you remember what it does? It's going to slow this pump. So, digitalis is going to make this pump go a lot slower. And so this pump, when this happens, that's what triggers this one.
Okay.
So in effect, if we consume this, it's going to also slow this one down. And then he also gave you information saying when you have calcium in the heart, in the cardiac cell, let's see, contractions are going to go up. So the more Ca we have in here, the more our heart's going to beat faster and faster and contract. So the question was, when we eat this, does our heart rate slow or speed up? And so then we think about it, we say, okay, if we're going to be slowing down this pump, then we're not pumping out as much Na, and we're not taking in as much K. So if we have less, let's say this one, instead of pumping out 3, let's say it's pumping out 2. Then we look over here and say, well, if this one, let's say, normally has 3 Na coming in, it now only has 2 coming in, and so they're going to be equal. So if this one's pumping in 2, this one is now going to be pumping out less as well.
So it has more calcium in it.
So now our calcium levels are going to spike in our cell. So upon consuming digitalis, or digitoxin, or foxglove, what's our heart going to do? Speed up or slow down?
Speed up.
Speed up. And so this is actually going to be poisonous for our cardiac cells. And they're going to pump so fast to where they go and freeze. So then you would die. That's how that worked out. So secondary ATP pump, it does use ATP, but not directly.
So that'd be positive feedback. Like if it started pumping really fast.
Yeah, you could say.
Okay.
It's going to get farther and farther away from homeostasis.
Okay. So secondary ATP pump or secondary transport involves a primary transport system and a secondary.
Right.